Live long and prosper in Sandusky, Ohio. This is the Focus Group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is our website. You can learn about us there, including our Tuesday podcast, which is called TFG Unbuttoned. If you are an audio listener, you are already getting that in your feed. We hope you enjoy it. And if you are audio but you want to check out the video, the Focus Group drops on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as a video podcast as well. We want to thank our partner here, Deep Discount. They've been with us for a number of years now. We encourage you to check out all the great savings and things to find at Deep Discount by going to focusgroupradio.com and clicking on the Deep Discount logo. Mr. Bennett, we are wrapping up this tepid February. I have a prediction. I think March, maybe even April, we're going to get walloped.
With snow, you think?
I think so.
The last few years, we seem to get snow in March and April, which I do not like.
No, you preferred it Christmas.
I want it November and Christmas, and then January 2nd, I want it to be spring. Maybe I should move to Florida. Hey, speaking of, you did this opening. I'm guessing this Sandusky reference, is that going to be your caught my eye?
Yes.
Because I was going to say, have you been to Sandusky?
No.
I'll look forward to hearing about it.
You been out there?
Oh, yeah.
Was that one of the places you called on when you were in sales for Subaru? Or?
Well, and, I went to school in Ohio, so...
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
No, so, Sandusky was quite
How
a place.
How far a drive is it?
Well, in Ohio, everything's 2.5 hours to something else. So it's probably about 2.5 hours from Marietta. But yeah, so I'll be curious to hear what you have to say about Sandusky. Oh, that was a shock. That was a shock to me. But so back to your story about March, though. I hope we don't get a lot of snow in March. It's usually heavy and wet if it comes in March.
Yeah, and it damages the trees and causes power lines to go down. But hasn't that been the pattern that winter seems to start later and go longer? So you have these dry Decembers and maybe you get a snowfall or two, but then you get walloped in March and April, just when you want to be outside, right?
When I lived in the Midwest, I was in Minnesota, and part of my territory was the UP of Michigan, which is the way, way northern part of Michigan and Lake Superior, and we had a foot of snow on Mother's Day. And I remember driving up there that Monday, and I just couldn't believe it. Now, it didn't last long, but
no,
I thought, that's pushing it. Have a foot of snow in May. Yeah.
I remember the year that Bob planted the vegetable garden. Maybe it was 2 weeks before Memorial Day, and we got a snowfall and a frost or something, and it killed the garden. And from that day forward, Bob refuses to plant anything outside until the weekend after Memorial Day.
Oh, okay. I usually tell people Mother's Day, even down here, which, we're about 3 weeks ahead of Philly, which is about 2 weeks ahead of you guys in terms of warmth. But is Bob does he still do a garden like he used to do?
Smaller. You know what he did?
The tomatoes, which I love.
Yeah, and he did a raised bed where he got some railroad ties.
Oh, okay. So put good soil in there.
And then he put down a barrier, like a weed barrier kind of thing. Right. And then he put in good soil, and now he just does tomato plants. They come out great.
That's wonderful.
2 years ago, I think maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago, he had quite the crop, and we decided to give our house to his sister and his niece because she had to quarantine before going back to Skidmore. The week they were there was when the harvest came in. Bob was like fit to be tied down here. He's like, they have all those tomatoes up there, and he buys the mozzarella and, the whole bit. So,
Did they pick and eat any or what?
They did. But we ended up giving a lot of that away because, you can't let it sit around for too long. So,
did he ever grow asparagus?
He has, yeah.
I was staying at my friend Jeff Milbrand. I was at his house, and the neighbor had this magnificent garden like Bob would have in the day. And it was the same sort of thing. The family went away and said, "Can you please watch the house?" And we were so excited because it was harvest time. We were going to have all this fresh asparagus and tomatoes and everything. So we went to the grocery store, and we came back. The whole thing was clear cut. The other neighbor came and got it. Can you imagine? Yeah. We're like, where did all the vegetables go? And then we see Hilda down the street with her basket full of goods. And she's like, oh, they told me I can get whatever. Well, not everything. I mean, she literally clear-cut the garden. I was so angry.
You know, that idea of going onto someone's property and doing that. So we used to have this thing called a burning barrel. Mm-hmm. It's like a oil drum kind of thing, a barrel, right? And we used to burn sticks and things in it. But it slowly got the base rusted out a bit because the heat would do something. Well, one day we drive up to the house and I look out to the field behind us and I said, "Hey, what happened to the burning barrel?" Because I don't know. So we started walking around and we start looking for the burn, and it's gone. And in fact, any piece of metal that might have been around it, gone.
Wow.
We come to find out a long time later that there was a guy that was collecting scrap metal going up and down the road.
Oh my God.
And he sees and he's like, well, it's all burned out. And he did us a service, but
so he took the barrel?
Isn't that kind of weird?
Wow. Well, yeah, I think that's really weird to go on someone's property and take something like that. I think that's really
That's what I thought too. I thought, this is just kind of like... Okay.
Can you still burn up there?
Very restrictive. It is a very restrictive thing. So, yes, you can, but they prefer to be in a wet season, which, of course, I completely understand. And we haven't done that in a long time. Like this past fall, we had a tree company come in, and I think I might have talked about it before. They had to prune some of the pine trees along our driveway, which the boughs, the branches are going over the house. There's a big pile of brush that had built up over a number of years from fallen trees and stuff like that. They eliminated that brush pile in like 20 minutes with one of these massive industrial shredders. They cut down a pine tree which was dead. It had some kind of a bacterial disease. It's a specific pine gets this. They ran that through the shredder, and then they had a robot-controlled stump grinder. And the guy sat, like, he was like 10 feet away with a little remote control thing, and the grinder is on little, it looked like a Mars rover. It goes up to the stump and boom, 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 it starts digging it out. We're like, wow, this is really cool.
That must have cost you.
It was not that bad. It was not that bad. For all the work that they did, it was not that bad. But that took the place of there was so much stuff that we had to get rid of that we would never, the burning barrel would have taken a burning year, I suppose. Right?
Yeah. Huh. I wish we could have a burning barrel here, but they don't allow you to do anything.
You can't in your area. There's no way you could do that.
I know, but I'd like to. One of my neighbors has an open fire pit, and I said, "You're going to burn down the whole house, the whole neighborhood."
Are they allowed to do that?
No, no.
And are you allowed to have bonfires on the beach?
Not in Rehoboth. They allow them in Dewey Beach, which is a little more lax.
South?
A little south, yeah. You can actually, there's a company that actually will do it. You could call up now and say, "Oh, I'd like to have a bonfire," and you can order, do you want clams? Do you want lobsters? Do you want crabs? Do you want a picnic?
They'll
do you
do
want
the
a
whole
lunch?
thing?
Well, they'll bring it all, then they light the fire, and yeah, it's actually quite cool. I love a bonfire on the beach. I haven't done one in decades, but I think the last time I did one was in Connecticut at a wedding, which was right out of college. It was the last
Where
time.
was that at? On the shore?
It was in Fairfield. Yeah, a friend of
Yeah.
mine got married down there, and they had a bonfire on the night of the reception dinner. But that's the last time I did it. But I always think that stuff is nice, fun. I always like that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems
I always like it.
harmless.
I haven't done it in 30 years, but I always love it. I like a fire pit. Brian always had a fire pit going. In the backyard.
There are fire, like when we had the pandemic, we bought a one of those, like a fire pit thing from Lowe's,
Right.
and we had all this wood, and it was wonderful to sit outside.
Yeah, I love it.
With the warmth and everything, and that's how you would entertain. You'd have people come over and they'd sit outside because we didn't want to, deal with COVID. Haven't used it since though. And then I've seen some that are designed to be like almost, I want to say, fireproof. It's like a steel cylinder with some kind of a special...
I think those are solo stoves, they call them.
Yes,
I think.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
You should do it again in the spring. It'd be nice to do on there's a chill in the
cool
air.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Light the fire. Sit out there and have a cocktail and a pickle and an olive. Have Pat and Gary over.
Yeah. I wonder if they have I should ask them if I think we got the idea from them or someone else, but yeah. It's things like that. It's. I used to love staring at the flames, just watching the fire crackle and everything, and it's just very. I don't know. It's very relaxing. I
Yes,
think,
no,
right?
it is. It's very much so. Very much so.
All right. Without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I was reading about this. Are you a fan of Elon Musk and his Tesla brand or anything like that?
I'm a fan of everything he's doing, like SpaceX and Tesla and all that stuff. I think that as a billionaire, multi-billionaire, whatever, I'm just not sure of why he inserts himself in the public discourse the way he does. It doesn't affect my appreciation for what he's been able to accomplish, but that's a weird answer, I know. But
No. I think you're right. I think he's done certainly an awful lot to move things forward, particularly from a tech standpoint, or as you said, space or exploration or other ways of transportation, which I think is great. Why you would insert yourself otherwise, I don't know, but that's what happens when you have a lot of money. So he developed this truck, which was supposed to compete with the traditional gas-powered pickup truck. It's a Tesla Cybertruck, and it cost between $80,000 and $100,000. And it looks like something out of a Star Wars
Blade
movie.
Runner.
Or Blade Runner, would that be it?
Yeah.
So it's very much wedge-shaped, and it's made out of stainless steel. And so it's certainly very identifiable if you see it. But already, it's only been on the market for a couple of months, and there's already appear to be problems with some of the owners saying that it's beginning to rust. So it says some Tesla Cybertruck owners in California are finding that their new $100,000 vehicles, when they get wet, tiny orange and gray marks show up on the car's steel exterior. The first Cybertruck deliveries arrived in November, and the blemishes have become an unwelcome find for the customers. It's especially surprising because they said on the website it advertises the car's exterior as an ultra-hard stainless steel exoskeleton that helps to reduce dents, damage, and long-term corrosion. They said Elon Musk even claimed that he had taken a submachine gun, to try to shoot holes through it, and no bullets could go through the stainless steel exterior. But these owners have taken to social media complaining about these orangish tint spots and whether it's rust or not. So after many tries, people have tried all kinds of solvents and window cleaners and whatever to try to get what appear to be rust stains off. Someone said to use the barkeep's helper. Remember our barkeeper's friend? That it's almost like a Comet paste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can actually buff out what are these little rust marks, but it also then takes out a layer, so it leaves a little spot on the car, which certainly you just spent $100,000. So, if you take something and you wipe it off, right, you're going to make a little mark, or it's going to lighten it up a little bit. So with stainless steel how that's going to work. Same with your stainless steel refrigerator, right? So they said that this, they can't figure out, or they couldn't figure out why this speckling of rust, and in fact it is rust. And so a longtime enthusiast, Justin Demery, who's a Tesla enthusiast, actually got down to basics and talked about it on a YouTube posting. And he said essentially what happened is, he said they've seen this in auto shops, that tiny flecks of iron or other metal had likely landed on the Cybertruck in the factory. And they get embedded into the stainless steel, and then when it gets wet or there's condensation or whatever, they'll begin to rust, and it adheres itself to the metal. So it's not the car rusting per se, but it's these metal flecks that happen with the production of the car. And the only way to really get rid of them, they said, is to use this cleanser and kind of buff them out, which people aren't too happy about. But it's really the only way to remove these rusty spots. So people are upset about it. Obviously, you just spent $100,000 on this truck. You don't want it to appear that it's rusting. And I just shook my head at this one because I thought, how does this happen? Again, usually what happens with paint, so metal fragments, for instance, will be at if you're in an automobile manufacturing facility. But with paint or hard surface paints or enamels they put on cars, the metal filings won't adhere to it. They would just blow off. But because this is a stainless steel product, it gets in, there's micro grooves, whatever, and so this fragments will get in there and create rust. But I thought this is one of those things that always derails companies when they don't. I can't imagine that with all the testing that they did, that this hadn't come up.
That no one bothered to decide they were going to field test the stainless panels to see how they would hold up in the real world?
That's what I don't get, because remember the DeLorean was also stainless.
Yes.
They did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I never heard complaints about the DeLorean, but I thought with all the things and all the testing and technology that Tesla employs, I would have thought that they would have certainly made a number of these and put them through all kinds of weather tests, and that these little rust stains would have developed in the testing. So I just found it odd.
I had read this article. I had read about this as well, and I found it fascinating. And I thought exactly what you did, which is during the development process in R&D, wouldn't they have kind of identified this problem? Everybody, the finish on a car is really critical. And I remember we were visiting you one weekend down in Rehoboth, and I was complaining about pine sap from the pine trees along our driveway. And Richard was like, "Hey, here's what you want to do," because he'd gone and searched for this, and he found out that hand sanitizer, if you put a little bit of that on a pine thing and you rub it off, it removes it, and it doesn't damage the paint. And that's the key here, right? Like everything we were trying to figure out how do we get the pine sap off is don't damage the finish.
Right.
I mean, Bob took it a step further. He read an article that with pine sap, you could use hand sanitizer and a cotton ball. But the article said when you remove all the pine sap, immediately go to a car wash and get your car cleaned, and then it will look great. But they weren't afraid of the finish being damaged, but they just said just get the car cleaned afterwards.
Right.
This is a horse of a different color. So even if you have a household, like Richard actually recommended the stuff we use to clean our stainless steel appliances with, or to at least to polish it. But I guess it's different because we're simply just cleaning. We're not removing something like a stain, right?
Right, you're taking fingerprints off or grease stains or something from the kitchen. But no, in this case, it's these little metal fragments that have embedded themselves into the stainless steel that will, in fact, rust. It's not rusting the car, but you certainly don't want to have a $100,000 car that looks like it's got rust stains on it.
No.
So, get that fixed, Tesla. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll start painting them, which will take away from
the normal Tesla vehicles have beautiful finish. You could get them in different different colors and stuff like that. And so.
But I think that was the shtick of this truck. I mean, it's pretty cool looking, as you said, very Blade Runner-ish. And so I think if it was
and
just
it was
painted,
long delayed. The truck was announced quite a while ago. I don't know what their production numbers are now, but it was delayed for a number of reasons. But this is one of those. I think you would call this a shoot yourself in the foot unnecessary problem. Like if it had just been checked out beforehand, it would never have been a problem, right?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. So what caught my eye happens. It's in Sandusky, and I was scrolling through Twitter, which is people screaming at each other, cats on Roombas, dogs doing funny things, and then this kind of thing pops up. And basically, it's this. There is a mall in Sandusky called the Sandusky Mall, and it has now got a store in it, which is also serving as the headquarters for the United Federation of Planets, or the Federation headquarters. So I'm showing, if you're not watching on video, I'll describe it. It looks like a typical mall entrance to a store, and there's the Federation logo or the Federation headquarters logo. Off to the right, there's mannequins in a window dressed as if they were on the Starship Enterprise. They have uniforms on, and when you look into the store, you can see that there are uniforms on the racks. There are memorabilia and toys. Out in the parking lot, there's a van that's painted to resemble a shuttle from the Enterprise called the Galileo, and it says on the side of the truck NCC 17017, which is like the designation of a shuttle. So I was like, is this real? Is this fake? What is this? So I went online. I found an article from a newspaper in Sandusky, and the headline reads, "Live long and prosper." This reporter named Mike Polk checks out the International Federation of Trekkers in Sandusky. So the byline says, "Space-themed charity organizations, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Enterprise. Our mission to explore strange new worlds, to boldly go to the Sandusky Mall." So basically what this is the Federation, it's the International Federation of Trekkers Incorporated. It's a non-for-profit that was organized when Gene Roddenberry was still alive. He was the creator of Star Trek. And here's the quote. It says, "The Federation is a nonprofit. It's the creation of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry and myself, the organization's president, Russ Haslage, Haslage. I contacted Roddenberry after I became a fan because I didn't like what was available out there for fans. A week and a half or so later, Gene called me back and said, "What do you think a true Star Trek fan organization should do?" He said. "They'd go places and help people. That's what we should do in this new federation." So they set up all these independent chapters. They're completely not-for-profit. Every dime they raise goes back into the community, and each local chapter does things in their own area. So the federation started in Northern Ohio. Each chapter gets to pick what they want to do, and there's L.A., there's New Orleans, the whole bit. So right now in L.A., they're dealing with floods, and the chapter in New Orleans is dealing with hurricane relief, and there's a chapter in Zimbabwe that's helping an orphanage. So I was like kind of blown away by this, and so they had a headquarters in Sandusky, and they had an opportunity to take a new space, and they thought, well, let's go to the mall, and we'll turn it into a store as well.
I was going to say, what do they sell?
Well, here's an article says the new Federation headquarters here at Sandusky is already impressive, but Ross says there is more coming. So basically, you could buy anything Trek related, like they have dishware, they have dolls, they have toys. There's a lot of Trek stuff on the market, so you could do that. You could also get a uniform. They don't specialize in uniforms, but you can get like a jersey and one of those little pipet pins that beep 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 beam me up, that go on your shirt. But the funnier part was underneath, and I think this hooks into what you were getting at. The funnier part was all the comments in Twitter, and someone said, I need to plan a trip to Sandusky. And someone replied to that and said, you want to think about that. So what is the deal with Sandusky?
Well, it's not, it's obviously space at the mall. So we'll start with that. I would say it's probably a lot like Hamden, Allentown, suburb of Albany.
Okay. Maybe like a Thomaston or?
Yeah, well, yeah. Not a bad place. A worker's place that, the steel mills or whatever have gone out and they're trying to reinvent themselves, which is a tough thing in the Rust Belt, right?
Yeah.
With all these places. So that's why I laughed. I mean, Sandusky would not be on the map if you were going to go to Ohio, if you were doing 10 things. Although this may be an attraction now. It's actually a smart idea.
Well, if you were judging from Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, there's a flock of people that now want to make the pilgrimage to the Federation headquarters to buy merch. They're gonna set up a little area where you can sit in a captain's chair, have your picture taken as if you'd
go. You'd stop. It'd be on our stop. If we did a road trip, you would stop there.
One of my favorite trips from the last several years was when Bob and I, during the pandemic, went up to, why am I spacing now?
Was it Troy, New York or something?
Well, it was Fort... there's a historic place up there. There's a start. They recreated the set of the original show, and you could tour it. And it's down to it. It was the blueprints came from Desilu Studios, the whole bit. I had a ball up there. Valley Forge. No, not Valley Forge.
Ticonderoga.
Fort Ticonderoga. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. Fort Ticonderoga. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun, but it's in an unusual part of New York. It's pretty north, right? I mean, It's like Sandusky, Ohio.
So do you think is the money that they raise, so it operates as a nonprofit, do they donate it then or do something for Sandusky?
No one takes a salary. No one's paid. We do not have administrative costs, and that allows us to give 100% of donations to the humanitarian fund to go to the people. So we have but the store has
human
collectibles.
Fund. From Seinfeld, the human fund.
So there you go. I mean, it's like that one was, and speaking of which, I had clipped a couple things from Twitter that I thought you might find amusing. So in between this and our business birthday, I'll tell you this one. Ice-T posted something. This is non sequitur, totally not related to the Federation being in Sandusky. He posts this. Recent experience. I got on an elevator with 3 kids about 10 to 13 years old. One said to me, "She thinks you're famous." I said, "Yeah, Ice-T." I might as well have said Santa Claus. They all looked at me like, who the F is Ice-T? I just smiled and walked off. He goes, lesson for the day, the age gap is real. That's one of them.
Ice-T.
Yeah. And then there was a thing I found, a picture that someone just said. It just shows the picture of a top of a plastic milk jug with those sell-by dates. Mm-hmm. And this one says, "Excuse me while I put away King Henry VIII's milk." And it says sell by October 23, 1538. Like Where'd that come from? And last but not least, some guy posted a picture of a tattoo he had put on his arm, and it's supposed to be President Trump, and it says, "Does this offend you?" And then if the way they did it, they did a side by side with Ross Michaels. You know who I'm talking about?
Yep.
Who used to be, and the tattoo looks nothing like Trump. It looks everything like, Ross Matthews. I'm sorry, it's supposed to be Ross Matthews. So I just love when that stuff happens. So that was caught my eye, and a little bit of a side train there. But now, folks, without further ado, the business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
I tried to find out how to pronounce his last name. I think it's either Riggio or Riggio.
Riggio.
Riggio, is that how you'd say it? So
Riggio,
Leonard Riggio, born February 28th. It's his 83rd birthday today. He's a retired businessman and entrepreneur. He served as the executive chairman of the bookstore chain Barnes & Noble, which is still around, by the way. I had no idea Barnes & Noble was still around.
Are you serious? You knew that.
No,
right?
I didn't, because a lot of them have closed. I thought
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And but it's the only one standing. Essentially, there's Borders and B. Dalton and Walden Books. All these booksellers have gone out of business, but Barnes & Noble still has survived. He was the largest shareholder from 1971 until 2002, when the company was sold to a hedge fund. And so under his leadership, the company expanded significantly. It was only one location on Fifth Avenue in New York when it started, when he bought the chain, or he bought the one bookseller, and turned it into a nationwide chain of over 600 stores, and then would buy up competing booksellers in various cities. He was born in New York City, went to the Brooklyn Technical High School, graduated after taking night classes at NYU. While he was at NYU, he founded the Student Bookstore Exchange in 1965. And so he turned the small bookstore into a leading retailer. He then acquired Barnes & Noble in 1971 and adopted the name for his expanding company. And it says he acquired hundreds of bookstores throughout the years and launched the Superstore concept with a store, with an in-store coffee shop and spacious reading alcoves. You remember when they started offering coffee? I think it was Starbucks came in there. They said he was recognized as being among the first entrepreneurs who turned the elitist world of bookstores into more of a recreational store. By 1977, there were 483 superstores, 528 mall-based B. Daltons, with sales of $2.8 billion a year. The company went public in 1993. He left the company in 2002, just as they were getting started with BarnesandNoble.com to compete with Amazon.com. And also it started the video game retail operation called GameStop.
He did GameStop?
Yep.
Wow, okay.
And was also heavily involved. He owned 49% of MBS Textbook Exchange, which is based in Missouri. It's the largest wholesaler of college textbooks. And so he left the company in 2002, put his brother in charge, who left the company in 2010, and then it's since gone through a series of bankruptcies and mergers and different holding companies owning them. But they're still in existence. It says it's the second largest book chain in the U.S. The largest one is called something called Books A Million. I never heard of it.
I was going to say Borders or like that, but wow, I've never even heard of the other one, right?
I never did either. And I went and I looked to see what it was. And they'd said, they'd given the name, and they said they're not in every location in the U.S., but I guess they're large because they do an awful lot of online sales. They were talking. They also were talking about the demise of reading. They said 70% of the population has stopped reading books, and so I think you had remembered they also were part of the Nook when they developed the Nook.
The Nook was a competitor to the Kindle. Yeah.
Yep, and they had thought that the books were going to go away, but not the case. People are still reading books, so that was not.
In fact, the interesting thing. Actual physical media, like a paperback or hardback book, is preferred by a lot of the Gen Z set. When I'm on the train these days, if I see someone younger, they're usually reading an actual book, just like in the old days where you could judge somebody by the book they were reading, like, oh, they're reading Tom Wolfe or they're reading this.
They have stopped selling magazines at the store. at Barnes and Noble. Used to have a huge magazine section.
Remember that?
Newspaper,
By like sports, cycling, like
everything,
lifestyle.
Yeah. So they stopped magazines, but they're still around. So I'll have to look to see where there is one. The one in Philadelphia had closed, and they made it into a restaurant. But there was a great Barnes and Noble right off Rittenhouse Square. It was great.
The picture you sent me, which I'm including for YouTube, that's the Barnes and Noble I used to go to all the time because that was the flagship
on
Fifth Avenue. Yeah, that was the flag. And then eventually they opened up a lot of others in the city. I don't know how much. They're down to maybe, I don't know how many are in town now, but some of the ones that I thought would have never survived are still there. Like we had one up on the Upper West Side next to us, which is still going strong. But you're right about something. Last time I was in there, all the magazine racks were gone. I didn't even recognize that until I was getting ready to leave. I'm like, wait a minute.
Remember Erin McHugh worked at a Barnes & Noble, but I thought she was down by Penn Station, wasn't she? Wasn't there a big
Or she
big
was at
store
Madison
there?
Park or something? Was that?
Yeah, I know there was a large.
I knew she used to also do the one on the Upper West at Broadway and 89th or something like that, or sorry, 87th. But because she would move around, right?
Yeah, it was. And she was what's the right word I'm looking for? She was intelligent about. Well, she was an author, so she certainly knew about books. So she was a valued employee, certainly with people coming in.
Yeah, she would help people pick stuff, and they could go up to her and say, "Hey, I'm a big fan of mysteries. Well, have you tried this?"
Yeah. So it's. I wonder. There's an independent bookseller here that still does quite well, but I wonder in a lot of towns or cities whether the independent booksellers will survive. I mean, last time you bought a book, do you just go online and buy a book, or do you go to a physical bookstore?
I Amazon. Went online.
That's what I do too. So.
And you bring up a great thing about independent booksellers, particularly LGBTQ. That was such a niche that I remember we had a store here in the city, Different Light, that and a lot of people knew the owner, and he was so nice, and he'd come in, hey, there's a new one that you're gonna love, and that's where you went to pick up your LGBTQ, literature. Now it's all mixed in, but it was great to have a space to go where someone could actually recommend something or say, have you tried this author, etc.
Yeah, I'll see what happens. So happy birthday, Leonard Riggio.
Not a bad one, and still kicking at 83. I think that's cool. GameStop's still around, by the way, unless they went out of business. Yeah, so that's.
I think they're still around.
The retail king. All right. Our shop talk this week centers on the idea of, finding more meaning in the work that you're doing. So we all know that we have to work. So most of us do. And, I would say that for most people, work is not necessarily the driving motivator or the thing that fulfills them. I've been fortunate to meet people in my career who love what they do. They don't even call what they do a job, but that percentage is much smaller than you might suspect. Are you the same, Tim? Have you met people that are like?
Not recently. I don't know anybody that I've recently met that's happy with their job.
Yeah,
or fulfilled by their job, I guess.
So this article comes to us from Fast Company. The writer is Stephanie Voza. And it's, according to Gallup, she says 32% of employees are saying they're engaged at work, which means there's an epidemic of disconnected workers. So if only 32% are saying that, 68 are saying, it could be somewhere else. But the truth is, you're going to spend 40% of your waking life for the next 40 years, and that obviously presupposes that you're entering the workforce after college or your early 20s. You might as well be happy doing or at least enjoying it to some degree. And she has a couple of ideas to make work life better. So she says that something else is usually some form of leisure. This is the thing that makes yet a large portion consider leisure to be passively sitting in front of a screen, which I think a lot of us fall prey to. And if you ask them, did you actively enjoy that? Did it engage you? Did you feel energized? The answer will be, well, no, it was just kind of happening around me, meaning you're just, you're not working. So I appreciated this because I think that what she's basically suggesting through this article is you do have your work hours and you're engaged and you're productive and you're doing your thing. But the time you're not working is equally as important to be engaged in, and you could utilize it a little differently. So what was her first recommendation there.
So her first, and I think the overall theme to this, before I say that too, and my thought was, if you bring a negative aspect to it and let it affect your work, you're going to have a negative experience. And the opposite is true if you look at it positively of how things can change. So this leads into shift your mindset. They said if leisure time isn't fueling you and work is stressful, Hall suggests starting with your mindset. If you have a negative mindset about work, you're going to find negatives because they're always there and there's always hassles. If you have a positive mindset and you're looking for opportunities and learning, you can find them as well. So it says it's important to reframe your mindset to find meaning. You need purpose. Everybody thinks that they have a purpose, but very few people can articulate what it is. And while I understood this, I thought it was a bit idealistic.
Oh, Tim, as you were reading it, I'm like, if I were listening in the car right now, I'd be like, wait a minute. It's sometimes a job's just a job, right?
Right. And it said, you need to ask yourself, is the work I'm doing engaging my strengths? Is it giving me purpose? Is it identify with my values, my passions, my strengths? Maybe sometimes it does, but I just thought exactly what you said. There's sometimes you're in a job or you, for whatever reason, are in a particular job. It could be you relocated with a spouse and you had to change jobs when you didn't really want to, or it's paying well and it gives you good health care benefits you can't get elsewhere. So you're weighing the options one side to another. So I just thought it was a bit idealistic to think that all the jobs you do are going to give you purpose. Sometimes that purpose may not be job related. It may be
what you do outside of work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that flows into what her next recommendation was, which this butts up against exactly what Tim was saying. There's some things we can't control. Some things, times a job's a job. There's work culture to consider as well, and the culture itself may be something that you don't like, but you like the task you're doing. So she says recraft your job, and this makes me think. Once you have found your purpose, Hall, the author, suggests, or the expert she talks to, suggests recrafting your job to improve your tasks and your relationships. Determine the tasks you can re-engineer, automate, eliminate, and outsource. That one sentence alone presupposes that you have more control over what you do on a daily basis within an organization than I think a lot of us have. The idea of re-engineering a task or eliminating it or outsourcing it means you're giving it to someone else to do, even though it might be on your plate. That was a little, I don't know. She says, what are the things you can do that would make the time you spend working on those tasks more pleasurable? If you can change something you don't like into something you do like, you've already made quite a big shift in the balance of positivity at work. I don't know. I'm puzzling about this one too, because if you have to deal with a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet all day, there's not a lot to do to make that exciting. But
I will say, when I had a mid-level manager's job at a office at Subaru.
Oh yeah, yep.
And one of the jobs I had was in finance and accounting for the financial statements for the dealerships. And everybody knows, right? Most people got 2 sets of books. So you had to try to get these financial statements from the dealer, and every month it was a real pain in the ass.
Detective work.
So you had to keep calling and keep badgering these dealers. Could you please send in your financial statement? Can you please send in your financial statement? So this happened in all the different regions around the country. And the deal was, it was almost like being a telemarketer. You had to call all the time, and it was a huge part of the day sometimes toward the end of the month. And I hated it. And so the company had said, if you get all your financial statements in each month, you'll get a $100 bonus or $400 bonus. I forget what it was, but this is how they were trying to incentivize people to do it. And I went to my boss at the time, Scott, and I said, I hate doing this. It's a waste of my time. I don't feel like doing it. He goes, no, I agree with you. He goes, I got an idea. He said, your assistant Shirley is very capable and bright and is always looking for something to do. Give her the money you'll get for the bonus and let her do it all. And so I was like,
brilliant.
Okay. So I went to her. I said, hey, Shirley. She goes, done. And so we had like 100% submissions every month. Nobody could figure it out. But what I would do is I would then go get her a gift card or gift certificates. Subaru would die now if they knew what I was doing. But so I would give her the $400 that way because I got it in my check and I would just hand it over to her.
Taxes, the whole
But
bit,
it was something I did not want to do. It was found money for me, and she made me look good because I had a 100% submission rate. But that was one of those things where you said it's as if you have the authority. Subaru would have died if they knew what I did.
Okay.
But my boss knew. My boss knew. And it's like, no, it's just, let's figure out a way to make this not so miserable.
Well, and that ends that section where she says, it's surprising how much you can re-engineer your own job by taking ownership of your own engagement at work, which is kind of wordy. It's great if your company does it for you, but you can recreate or you can create an environment where you can engage yourself. So this is like, I love your story because it's bending the rules, right?
Yeah. But it got the, it was a different ends to the
means. Got the job done.
Means to the end. Which goes into which I could not have done that without the support of my boss at the time. And it says, in some cases, you don't have full authority, as you mentioned, or full autonomy, and you need the support of a boss or colleagues. And they said, so you have to be careful how you present it. Now, I did I'm miserable, I hate this, and we came up with an idea. But they said there's two ways to go about it. You can do this, I'm upset, I need to figure this out. Or the other example was, is there a more engaging or fulfilling way we could handle this? I went with I need to figure out another way. I'm miserable. So,
and the way you figured out is very clever, right?
Yeah. So that was.
And someone was getting an extra bunch of cash tax-free.
And she was
every
delighted.
month.
She was.
Yeah.
She was so upset when I got transferred because she knew she wasn't going to have the same deal with someone else.
Gravy train's pulling out of town, right? And you're like, I'm going to go to the Federation. I'm being transferred to the Federation headquarters in Sandusky.
At the end of this article, it says when people are more engaged, they're more productive, they stay longer, they're more creative, and they report higher levels of well-being. And that's a pretty obvious thing, right? If you're happy, good workers make happy customers. I used to always say that. Customers are organizations that did well with treating their employees right. The employees will in turn treat the customer right. And I think so many companies do that backwards. They try to figure out how to make the customer happy and ignore their internal policies.
Their employee their issues there.
Yeah.
So that was Shop Talk. Not a bad article, but I think you and I have read enough of these that I like the point of it. I like the thought process of reimagining what you're doing to somehow change your mindset. But some of it I think if you're listening to some of this, it just sounds like, I'm working at the drive-through at McDonald's. Like, how do you change that?
Right. No, there is. You're right. There's certain jobs where that would relate to, and there's many that it just simply won't. And they could be a blue-collar job or they could be an executive job. There's people that are unhappy in both equally. So it's it's a tough thing. I don't know. I don't know if I could. You and I have worked for ourselves. You've worked for yourself and owned your own agencies for many, many years. Me, not as long as you, certainly. I'm not sure I could go back into the environment again.
I'll tell you this, Tim. I serve on our co-op board here at the building, and I don't think I'm not saying anything out of turn to say that I routinely get frustrated at the layers that have to be gone through to get something done. Sign on, sign off. What about this? What about that? And the autonomy, of owning it, I've owned a business, as you said, since I was 26, I think. And it's just, everything's faster. It's like, let's do this. Okay, done.
Get things done. Yeah.
Or I used to have employees who, the keyboard broke. Go over to Apple. Here's the credit card. Buy a new one. But if you're in a company, it was requisition. You have to call IT.
Where are we going to find it? Do we have another one? Oh, they might have one in another building. Let me get it sent over.
Yeah, and me in technology, my big belief is buy whatever you want tech-wise because it's going to make you more productive and it's going to do great in the long run. But imagine being in an organization where you have to justify every expense, right?
I still remember when I think you went up to, you were at Words 98 or something. I forget what it was, or Word 98, or it's one of the Microsoft platforms, and you were sending stuff to us at Subaru. None of us could open it because we were
you were down at
Windows 95
or 90.
Yeah, 95, 88. And I remember calling you and saying, John.
Got it
down,
say.
You're like, what? It's 2002. I know. It's 10-year-old software. We can't open anything up unless you go back to...
I remember telling everybody in the office that we had to down save, and everybody's like, "What?" And I'm like, "There's an option to save as Windows something or other." And I remember Robin just sitting there shaking her head. But this is what
But to
you're
buy
getting
that
at,
suite, right? To buy that suite of software for
Company
1,200
as big as
employees,
you guys, yeah,
it becomes a much bigger decision. So, but no, this was a good shop talk. So thank you, and thanks for joining us here today in the focus group. You can learn all about us at focusgroupradio.com. While you're there, you'll also find a link to our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned, which is released every Tuesday. Thanks to our friends at Deep Discount. They've been with us here for quite some time on the focus group, and we appreciate their support of us and your support of them. Remember, when you're out there, arrive alive, don't text and drive. We still see a lot of idiots texting and getting in accidents, and it's not a good thing, as John probably just experienced this weekend. It's usually somebody in the slow lane or somebody in the lane going slow.
Sunday,
you go by them, you give them a dirty look, and their head's in their phone.
Somebody in the passing lane, left lane, drifts into the lane in front of, like our lane in front of, just literally no signal, no nothing. As we went by, I saw the hands up on the steering wheel on a phone, and I'm like, "You got to be crazy to do this." But
yeah, I wish I had a gun with a dart on it that would, like with a suction cup, that'd say "idiot," and I could shoot it out like a boom, like a suction cup thing. So, remember those little guns with the suction cup, the plastic?
I
gun?
loved them. Yeah, loved
Do
those
they sell
things.
those anymore? Probably not.
I don't know, because it had a spring in it. You used to remember.
Yeah.
You used to
Bing.
you put that thing in, and
Sting your
sometimes
legs, a little leg if you got a hit.
it could take your eye out. The thing could take
Easily.
your eye out.
Easily. Yeah. Well, there you go. I'm going to look for one of those for your birthday. So, hey, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time here in the Focus Group.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.